big Hollywood sunglasses and light the torch, because it's cellar time. Welcome to the Crack Cellar, as the prophecy was once foretold. I'm Two-Spirit Penguin Daniel.
And I am Ascended Nickels, polished as ever, here to shine upon you.
Don't worry, he'll have a few cameos and be back for Season 7.
Single tear just dropped out of my eye.
Oh, shit. So,
Michael Shanks, where are you?
Someday I really hope that we are sitting here talking about the new Stargate series, but for some reason I still have my doubts.
We think. I think it's closer than we think.
Well, that's what everyone says, but it's like I have PTSD.
I think this year we're going to be talking about it.
I hope so. I hope from your lips to God's ears, Broadcaster Nickels.
We are close.
And speaking of being close, I hear you're close to a new game that you have had a little one-night stand with, called Valheim.
A few, maybe a few.
So I'm not big on the survival horror games that are more like broadly based, like open world sort of MMO style survival games.
I wouldn't call it horror at all.
I think some of them are like DayZ is like is a horror, but then like the one. I
thought you were saying Valheim. Yeah.
Well, no, I just mean the genre in general. Valheim's sort of in this genre of games that sometimes with DayZ you kind of have horror, and then there's other examples like Ark. Did you ever play Ark?
I didn't.
That one was not really horror. I think that one's more like Valheim. But I've never been into that genre in general, and I've always sort of poo-pooed all the games. But this Valheim game is the first one where I saw the trailer, and I was like, I want to play that. So, Broadcaster Nickels, I know that you've been playing it for about 5 days straight. You've been on a bender with your new flame. I want you to give me the sales pitch, Broadcaster Nickels. Why should I press the buy button on Steam?
Well, for one, it gives you some AC vibes, but not immediately. Like the aesthetic of it almost immediately gives you some AC vibes. You're just like, oh, especially when you level up skills, you get a very familiar special effects when you level a skill up that you're going to see immediately, and you're going to be like, wow, that's some nostalgia right there.
Are you talking about like the balloon thing?
I'm talking about like the AC level up, the purple like bling, or the rainbow level up. Remember when you...
It's like a rainbow of balloons, right?
That was when you actually leveled up. But remember when you leveled a skill up, you like had like that purple balloon thing?
Oh, yeah.
So like it's like a mix between both those, and there's a couple other things in the game that remind you of AC, like portals, for instance, that you don't get to immediately, so you won't see it, you won't pick up on it. But once you do get there, you're going to be like, holy shit, this is like the hub.
So it uses like the portal system as the instant travel mechanic?
Yeah, but I'm not even there yet. Like I'm probably a couple days away from getting there. And me and Alex have been playing a lot. But nonetheless, this game is very much a survival game. And if I were to say, if it was like a mix of two games, it is literally RuneScape or any budget MMO you want to pick mixed with Rust. Where it's like this giant open server, your personal server-based world that you get to host people in. And this world is fucking huge. Like me and Alex have not even scraped probably like an eighth of the world yet. And we have been going hard at the game.
So you're saying that it's a little bit better than Fallout 76 is what you're telling me.
Absolutely. And the building part of it is really expansive. Like there's wood, and then there's Bronze Age, and then there's log cabins, and there's stone making. But all the just to get to making stone, you have to be able to make a furnace, which requires you to make a pickaxe, which requires you to do a lot of mining with just an antler pick, which you need to hunt deer for, and you need a bow to hunt deer effectively, and there's just all these steps just to get one more item. And it's a very literal game. Like, you have to keep out of the rain to stay dry. You lose your bonuses, and you lose your stamina quicker when you're in the rain. You can get cold. There's wagons that if you want to carry heavy material long distances, which you're going to be doing a lot of, you build carts, and the carts have to have surfaces that are flat enough to go across, which means you have to till and cultivate and manipulate the land with your hose to make roads, which takes a considerable amount of time. This essentially, to play this game solo, you're going to be doing very, very small steps every day. It's going to take you months to get anywhere in this game playing solo. You have to have help.
And what's the landscape like in terms of how many players per server? How are the servers created? Who is chosen for what server? How does all that work?
So you can create your own server. As soon as I installed the game, it's I think it's less than 100 megabytes or something. It's a very small fucking game.
Wow. Wait. 100 megabytes?
It was impressive, and I'm exaggerating, but it's less than a gig. I'll tell you that. It's less than 500 megabytes. I'm pretty sure. Wow. It installed in a second. As soon as I downloaded it, it was just installed. And as soon as I installed it and I started it up, I started my own server, and Alex did the same thing. We just ended up playing on his server. And your character, from what we understand, everything you do, because you can make multiple characters, like Diablo, you make characters that sit around a campfire and on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
And this character that I've brought into my server and Alex's server keeps all of his equipment and his inventory.
That's very Asheron's Call style. It's called a
yes.
mule.
and here's where the Asheron's Call comes in. You can turn player killer on. So when you go into a server, the host can allow player killing or no player killing. So you can make a server super established with castles and shit like that, and then make it public or something like that and allow player killing, So there's a lot of scenarios. And once you play this game once, you'll get an idea of how fucking big this map is. It's gigantic. It's impressively big because of how low resolution the game is.
Is it bigger than Dareth?
Absolutely.
Dude, really?
Once you see the scale of this map, give me.
Hold on.
It might be the exact same.
Is it?
It might.
Are there load screens, or can you run from one side of the map to the other? Yep. No load screens.
No load.
So you're telling me that this is Asheron's Call style map with no load screens that's actually bigger than Dareth?
So I've played 39 hours of Valheim with another person, all right? Not solo. And we've done nothing but explore. We've been building huts, and every single hour of every day we've just been exploring, gathering stuff, continuing to search the map and get it searched so we know where everything's at. And we have probably covered less than 5 to 8% of the map. Visibly. When you hit M on the keyboard and you look at the map and you zoom all the way out, you're on this planet floating in a universe. It's actually pretty cool looking. And we're just like this speck in this giant grayed out world. And there are no loads.
Okay.
Well, keep this in mind. There are load screens like Asheron's Calls dungeons, where you can go into a dungeon and load, but everything on the surface is no load screen. There are no regions that you have to load into.
All right. Well, that's one for the buy column for sure, if that's true, because man, that is exactly what I miss in video games, specifically massively multiplayer online games, which leads me to my next question. How many players can be on one of these servers? It's got to be high, right? Because if the world is that big...
Right now, and I'm not a veteran. This game's actually been out for quite some time now. and I'm not totally familiar, but right now, as it stands for me and Alex, when we're making these servers, which are just maybe you can make bigger servers, I'm not quite sure, but it says 1 out of 20. I'm pretty sure. I might be getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure my memory serves me right. It says 1 out of 20 when I join Alex's server.
Yeah, see, that doesn't add up. There's got to be something we're missing with that, because why would you have a world as big as Dareth and only let 20 people in? That's ridiculous.
Once you play the game and you realize how much of an area you make yours, you realize that 20 people is quite a bit. If you had, so 20 people is 4 or 5 man crews, right? Me and Alex have done some damage just in the areas we've explored. We've carved our path out. In the area we've explored, we got a substantial amount going. But again, it's just a sliver of the map. If we had 3 other people just on our team, and then there was 3 other team of 5 people out there doing their own thing, I think it's enough. Especially
that would only cover like 20% of the map, assuming they weren't in the same area as you.
For 3, that's only in 3 days worth of gameplay, right? This is this is like a long-term thing, right? Like Rust, for instance, that's why I brought it up, because there's a lot of building server-based maps. You get a wipe. There's a wipe once a week, And for this game, I could see a wipe once a month, maybe. I think Escape from Tarkov has like a once every 6 months or 3-month wipe. Once everyone's so OP and the newbies don't even stand a chance on any server, they just wipe everybody.
But I thought the servers were created by people, so wouldn't the creator of the server have power whether or not there's a wipe, or do they just force wipes on people?
Well, remember, you have your own personal server that you can build up and you never have to wipe. But eventually, after, I imagine, months and months of gameplay, you're going to have that. You're not going to have much to do on your own personal server. So the end game for this game is kind of like taking the best gear that you're comfortable with losing or whatever you're feeling saucy with at the time, and jump into some public server, right? Because there are public servers and then there's private servers. So you can go into a public server and just like go tear shit up or something.
Okay.
But again, I could be getting some of this wrong, because I haven't joined into a public server yet. There is a distinguishable thing in the user interface in the game, in the menu, where it says private servers are public servers, and me and Alex have just been playing on our own personal servers so far. So I don't know if when we jump into the public server, it's like, hey, you need to build a character that's blank, or blah, 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 or if people can actually set rules to joining their server so you can't bring in your nice shit. I'm not... I'm not quite sure what the rules are yet.
Very interesting.
But the potential of what I'm seeing is really cool. It's a super addicting, and it's already beaten GTA 5 with peak concurrent players. And it hasn't been out that long.
Yeah, it looks really cool. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of those games in general, but I just happened to catch this trailer randomly, and then I was like, where the fuck did this come from?
For sure.
But
I can't believe
thing I'm really curious about. The one thing I'm really curious about is combat. So what's the combat like?
It's pretty much like, a free roam hack and slash type thing. So like,
is it tab target? Is it like action?
No, it's action.
Okay.
No targeting at all.
Okay.
You just have your reticle, and you kind of like, like an FPS, you just kind of get it over the enemy and click. And so you have bows. The only thing that acts somewhat differently is a bow, where it's like this blooming reticle that's slowly shrinking as you pull the tension on the string, and then that, judges the distance in which it travels.
Is there any magic?
So far, no. But the game is super expansive. I mean,
you might just not got to it.
Exactly. It was taking us 3 days, and we just got to bombs. We found some ooze that some green jelly D&D type creature drops, and it gave us a recipe to make a fire bomb. So, who knows?
I see. Well, Yeah, I think I'm gonna pick that up. And let's play when we do it, let's do a public server. I want to see what it's like in the
Yeah, that'll be
wild.
fun. That'll be
Yeah.
fun.
And
I'll tell you right now, that in the public server, I'm pretty sure it's just going to be like Wild West shit. You're just going to like start with some stuff and just try to siege some people's castles.
well, I have Darktide on my mind, so that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
One thing I didn't mention though is that there are like mystical creatures in the game. You do fight dragons and giant trolls and giant tree creatures, and
is that the end game basically? The raid bosses?
no, not even.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the dragons might be end game. I haven't ran into any. I just know they exist.
I see. Well, Broadcaster Nickels, Valheim is one thing, but there exists something on a higher plane, something even more rare and more foretold than the prophecy in which we base our Crack Cellar antics. It is a mythical beast, much like the Chimera or the Kraken. We call it the Snyder Cut, Broadcaster Nickels. Are you ready to preview a movie that already came out 4 years ago, but it's going to be better this time, we promise?
Indubitably.
What's that? You want more Crack Cellar? This is good. Join your lords on Twitter at The Crack Cellar and Facebook.com/The Crack Cellar.
Hey, you over there. Are you a straight-up Chad or a strong woman? Well, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and your favorite podcasting app. Or, if you're a straight-up beta cuck, find us on YouTube with the rest of the Cloud Chasers. And we're back with our preview of the Snyder Cut.
It is kind of crazy how good that trailer looked.
Oh, I know.
I was never one of those Snyder deniers. In fact, I love 300. I've never been one of those people that says Snyder's a shitty director. A lot of people out there think there is. Mainly they're Marvel fans.
Oh, I think 300's amazing. That first, I didn't think the sequel was that good, but
one of the greatest action films out there, no doubt.
Hell yeah.
He also like pioneered the slow-mo panning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many people stole that shit after he did that movie.
Oh yeah.
But nonetheless, I got a lot of hope for this movie now. Seeing that trailer.
So let's just get this out of the way right off the bat. I only watched Justice League once, and I watched it late at night while I was drinking, and I'm pretty sure I only made it about halfway through the movie, so I don't think I actually saw the end of the original Justice League, but it was god-awful, and it almost made me swear off DC altogether. I remember waking up the next morning just be like, fuck this, I'm not watching these anymore.
Yeah. And just for the record, it wasn't god-awful as in now Superman CG's the mouth on that fool was terrible. But nonetheless, back to my point.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
That was bad. It was the editing that was bad in the original Justice League. It was all over the place, incoherent, and it was boring. You just you never felt for any of the characters. Like everybody was just supposed to be worth something, you know? It just felt bad.
Yeah.
And just seeing this trailer, you just feel the depth of it. Knowing it's going to be 4 hours and seeing this new trailer, it's like, okay, I'm starting to see the potential of his original vision.
Yeah, I think what the original Justice League did truly was expose Joss Whedon as a hack. Because I'm guilty of this as well. I used to gush over Joss Whedon. I really liked him as a director, as a creator, as a writer. I really liked Cabin in the Woods, which in retrospect, I'm not sure exactly how much he had to do with. It seems like when he really gets the reins given to him, it doesn't turn out well. And I wonder if he was maybe surrounding himself with some really good people that made him look really good.
Most definitely.
But what will be different? What do you think? Because I don't know what you've heard about this, but I have heard personally that 80% of this movie is going to be new and not from the original Justice League.
Yep.
That seems crazy to me. So, like, what do you think will be different? Because what I remember of the first original version is basically there was this guy who wanted to terraform Earth into something that he could or his people could exist on, or something. Like, he wanted to, it was like a twofold thing. Like, I think he wanted to destroy Earth just because he was a villain. He's like, I hate you, Earthlings, you're all gonna die. But he also wanted to, like, terraform it, right? Am I imagining that?
Yeah. What? No, you're not imagining.
Okay.
So there's Apocalypse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or not? Sorry, not. Apocalypse is Marvel. God damn it.
You're thinking of Darkseid.
Darkseid.
Yeah.
So there's Darkseid, and then there's his henchman, the guy with the crown. I forget. It's like Wolf something, I believe.
Oh, that's the cool CG guy from the trailer. Now, I was going to ask you about that because I don't remember that guy looking that good in the first movie. Is that new CG?
Yep, they changed him.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because I was going to say that didn't look familiar. I was thinking that might be new.
Nah, dude, Snyder's coming in and he, like you said, 80% of the movie at least looks like it's changing. I don't remember a terrible amount of the movie because, like you said, it's almost 4 years old. Is that an exaggeration, or is it really 4 years old?
I really do. I think that my daughter wasn't born yet when I watched that movie. I'm pretty sure.
God.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it was about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, so bear with me here if I'm getting things wrong, but essentially it just starts off with Batman, Ben Affleck, Fat Batman. Sorry, Ben, but it's true. It starts off with him like finding a mother box, which are these artifacts that Darkseid and his army used to like to make boom tubes, essentially, that teleport you all over the universe. These boom tubes are what that CGI. I'm forgetting it. It's like Wolfbane or
Steppenwolf.
Steppenwolf. That's what it is. Yeah, Steppenwolf. So it's what he uses to get to Earth and his army to Earth. So Batman finds one of those and he investigates it, and then something happens and he gets a message from Flash, which is from the future, and he has these visions about a world that's been devastated by Darkseid, and so he puts the team together of Wonder Woman and Cyborg and all those motherfuckers and Aquaman, nonetheless. And that's what the original movie's about, but it's so edited, it's edited so bad that it's almost unwatchable. And
it was unwatchable.
Everyone knows it. And I mean, that's where it gets such a bad reputation. It's just such a bad movie.
Yeah.
But just watching the trailer and seeing, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the trailer, it's weird to say spoiler alert about trailer because it was really good. But at the very end, the meme world gets the biggest satisfaction in the world by hearing Jared Leto say, "We live in a society."
Did you just call him Jaleo? I love that. That's good. We're sticking to that.
Jared Leto.
Jaleo.
Jaleo. But nonetheless, the meme society was satisfied nonetheless.
Yeah.
That was he was never in Justice League, period.
He wasn't, because I know I didn't see him.
Joker and the Suicide Squad was completely different. So it's just, that was the hype level after seeing the trailer, and like that makes you, it has to be at least a mediocre 4-hour movie at this point. At least. It can't be shitty at this point, because what I've seen is too good.
So speaking of that, do you think that Jared Leto was the first choice, or do you think they called Joaquin Phoenix first? He said, "Nah, I'll pass," and then they got Jared Leto. Which one? Because I think that they actually reached out to Jared Leto first, and I think this whole Snyder Cut might be a submarine attempt to bring Snyder's vision of the DC universe back to the forefront, because there's this weird back and forth going on in the news. I don't know how much you followed this, but I've been following all of Snyder's interviews. So I haven't been following every news story about the Snyder Cut by any stretch, but anytime there's an actual interview with him, I read it. And he's been saying very consistently, this is it. I'm never going to do another DC, not because I don't want to, but because they don't want to. This is it. We are just a side story sort of thing that's only going to exist for itself, and it'll never be expanded upon ever again. But then you have quotes from people like Kevin Smith, who's like, well, I know he says that, but I know for sure that he has a plan for after this, and it's all in the movie. And like, there's these weird back and forth, and then there's interviews with the Warner
Kevin
Brothers
Smith is
chief
right.
too. The chick who runs Warner Brothers movies or whatever, she was out there and she was like almost unprovoked. Like she had, like it was her mission to go out and say this publicly. It's like, we appreciate Zack Snyder, but this is what we call a movie cul-de-sac. It's going nowhere, and he is not a part of our future plans for, like, almost like she knows that this movie is going to kick ass and people are going to call for it, and she's trying to nip it in the bud before anyone can give it a shot.
I think it's just, you're right. You're totally right, but...
and that's why he wouldn't want to bring Joaquin Phoenix in, too, because he's a part of the new DCEU.
Sure. And I mean, back to your original point, I mean, I'll just cap it off what you said is money talks in the end. You know, it doesn't matter what all these people that are in charge currently think. If this movie makes buco bucks, that's just how it works. It's that or the highway. I guarantee you that. People at the higher up people at the studios know that. So if this movie does mediocre, then everything you just said is probably absolutely true, but nonetheless, back to what you said with Joaquin Phoenix versus Jared Leto and stuff like that, it's kind of like a 3-part thing. One, I definitely think Jared Leto was the first to come to this new cut, and the reason I say that is because the reason why Jared Leto was so pissed to begin with when Suicide Squad came out and then the original Snyder Cut never came out, because he felt kind of robbed. You could feel the energy from the guy. Like, it's just like, this is bullshit. Like, people just think I suck and they don't even know. That's where that famous quote comes from, where it's like, a lot of my content got cut. There's hours of footage you guys haven't seen.
Yeah.
So I think what we saw at the end of that trailer was probably footage from a long time ago. I could be wrong, but I think that's old footage for sure. But who knows? Second part is that I'm kind of worried that if that is not old footage and that is new Jared Leto footage, that is eerily similar looking to Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, which means one of two things.
Wait, you mean Heath Ledger, right?
No.
You think that he looks like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker? I thought he
not absolutely. I'm saying relatively compared to his Jared Leto's Suicide Squad Joker.
Compared to that, everything.
He had longer hair. It was kind of raw, like Heath Ledger or Joaquin Phoenix's, whatever. Take your pick. The makeup was a little bit more raw. Unlike, I'm just saying, Jared Leto's Suicide Squad Joker was a lot more refined and gangster looking, a lot more pompadour. I don't know. He cared a lot more about his image, you could tell. But nonetheless, one of these two things is true. Rather, they have old footage of Jared Leto looking like that, which means this is true to the vision, or they changed that. They went back and they said, Jared, we want you to look more like Heath Ledger or more closer to our time, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, which makes me think one of two things again. They're just trying to make him look like something people like, or they're actually trying to connect those two universes, which is just going to convolute this fucking shit even more, and it's going to leave a stain. If this truly is the last movie and it does mediocre, it's going to leave a fucking stain on this shit, because no one's ever going to know where this shit ever was going. You have Wonder Woman 1984, you have DC Black Label, you have the Justice League mix, and I know there's one more I'm forgetting. There's something else that cuts a new timeline in this whole DC fiasco that I'm forgetting.
Is it
about.
that like Batgirl video game that we talked about like 6 months ago?
No, it's a movie.
It's not that.
It's a movie. But nonetheless, we don't need to think about it too much. It's just like
Best
it's
not to.
convoluted. It's convoluted enough.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
so if it truly is the end, it's like, man, not only did you guys not leave it on a high note, you left it on the most shitty note possible.
Yeah. Well, let's do a little crackpot speculation here. With everything that we know about this movie and what everyone's saying about it from both sides of the camp, let's just say that this movie breaks every streaming record on the planet. Let's just say it is an unmitigated success. It is like the most popular DC movie of all time. Internet's ablaze about it, et cetera, et cetera. Just like best case scenario for Zack Snyder. Do you think that would change WB's mind and they'd just be like, all right, Snyder, this is your cart to steer now? Do you think they'll do that? Or do you think that this is more of a personal thing or a philosophy thing and it doesn't matter how popular this movie is, they're not going to let him take over? What do you think about that?
Well, I absolutely think they'll give him the green light. If it's a good movie, you gotta think. DC has not only Snyder, but James Gunn now, who's rebooting Suicide Squad, and they have David Ayer, who did Joker. All three of those directors are kind of on the fringes of Hollywood. They're not these kowtowing like directors, SJW, if you will, Hollywood elites.
Yeah.
So, I don't think looking at Snyder through that particular lens or focus that way is quite right, because if you have that logic with him, then they're gonna have to get rid of all the other two of their aces in the hole.
Okay, so you said David Ayer did Joker, but that's Todd Phillips as far as
I'm sorry. Not David Ayer. Sorry. David Ayer was Tank or Fury, wasn't it? I forget. Who's David Ayer?
The name sounds familiar, but I couldn't.
I knew I was getting it wrong, but David Ayer popped in my head. But yeah, Todd Phillips.
Okay.
Nonetheless, guy did Hangover, right?
Yeah.
He did. He's not in the core of Hollywood right
What's
now.
he confirmed for making right now for DC?
Joker 2.
So that's a confirmed thing?
I think it's pretty much on the edge of rumor turning into unofficial trailer soon.
Okay. All right. So it's like it's a highly credible rumor. Okay. Interesting.
It's one of those things where it's too good not to be true.
Well, that could be like the unstoppable force versus the immovable object sort of thing if the Snyder Cut goes nuts, because Joker went nuts too. Todd Phillips version. So like when they're like saying, well, are you going to let Todd Phillips make the next Joker, or are you going to let Zack Snyder make it? If that could be a real fucking whirlwind.
I think they'll have their Triforce. Because again, like I brought James Gunn up for a reason. He's outcasted by Marvel. DC picked him up. He's rebooting Suicide Squad. Everyone in Hollywood saying that movie is looking fucking awesome. He's bringing that Guardians of the Galaxy energy to the movie.
I hope so.
So, I mean, the reason why I brought them up is kind of like this trifecta is that if Zack Snyder's movie ends up being great, and when you're talking about this theory of even though it's great, they'll still stifle it and not let him move on. I just don't think that's even in the cards for them, or they would have fucking never allowed this to happen to begin with, because they have Todd Phillips and James Gunn being already a problematic, quote unquote, toxic director, if you will, or writer. And then they have Todd Phillips, quote unquote, a toxic director or writer for Hangover. And I'm not trying to diss him or anything, but I don't know much else from him.
Yeah, the DC universe is looking very politically incorrect right now with the people doing its stuff.
So if they were to do that, they would have to do it across the board, which I just don't think it's financially in the cards for them.
Interesting.
Unless they're looking at this coup, if you will, eventually, where James Gunn and Todd Phillips going to make one more movie and Snyder gets to do his one more movie, and everyone's like, sweet, I love DC. DC is awesome now. Yeah. And then they're like, fuck all you guys. Get these BIPOC women in here and some and some transgender directors. Maybe let's get the one of the Wachowski sisters in here. You know,
give her a movie.
Yeah, and you know that all that fun stuff happens, and
yeah, well,
it's not out the ballpark.
My feeling is that we could be in for a very bloody civil war in the DC universe if the Snyder Cut is really good. Now, if it's okay, if it's average, I think it's going to just kind of, walk into the sunset. But if it's just baller good, like just everyone's raving about it, I could see some real nasty infighting going on for the next couple years about who's going to take the reins of the DCU, which could be interesting. In fact, I kind of hope it happens just because I like the shakeup. Like, I like Todd Phillips. I kind of like Gunn, although he bothers me a little bit sometimes.
He does. He troubles me on a core soul level.
Yes,
a little bit.
A little bit. I've seen pictures of him that have scarred my soul that I'll never forget. And he's a great movie maker, though, so I forgive him.
Yeah, he has that going for him.
He does.
Potential diddling aside,
but
he has that going for him.
But going back just to the movie itself, who do you think has a higher chance of being redeemed in this movie, Batfleck or Leto's Joker?
Leto's Joker.
Yeah, I agree. Mainly just because of the trailer.
Ben's my boy, all right? The Town,
great movie.
He knocked it out of the fucking park. Let's be real here. It was an amazing movie. And he got a couple other, more schlocky movies of recent. I forget what it was. He was in some elite sniper squad, ex-military, and gets somebody killed, and redemption story through a Nicaraguan fucking forest, drug lord shit. I don't know what it was called, but it was some Netflix special type shit. It was good. It was good. I love my boy Ben, but nonetheless, seeing that 3 seconds of Jared at the end of that trailer just made me, it gave me Asgardian imbuement, like I was like, whoa, now all of a sudden I understand. I see that Jared Leto was supposed to be far more.
It had totally different energy from his Suicide Squad version.
Dude,
totally different.
The white fucking hospital gown or whatever it was with the SWAT vest and the AK just sitting on the cliff with just like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre makeup on, dude. Dude, that was too fucking cool, man.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to agree with you as well. I'm a huge hater on Batfleck. I always have been. I didn't like him in Batman versus Superman either. He's just not good as Batman. It was a mistake, I think. And I think he knows that now too.
I think a younger Ben. I think a younger Ben would have been good.
A younger Ben would have been good as Bruce Wayne, but I don't think he would have ever been good as Batman, period.
Yeah,
that's just
you
my
might
opinion.
be right. I feel like if he was younger, he would have been able to get more in shape and more agile and made some cooler fight scenes and moves and stuff. But yeah, man, he just depressing is one word to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also really hard to see Ben Affleck in a role like that when you have, first of all, Daredevil. Need I say more?
You're right, man. Strike two.
But even going beyond that, like he was in every Kevin Smith movie, and his characters in all the Kevin Smith movies, it just like it ruins any potential serious role, with the exception of The Town. That's like one of the only serious roles I've seen him in where I buy it. Like usually when I see him in a role that isn't comedic or goofy, I'm just like, nah, I can't. All I'm seeing right now is the Ben Affleck from the Kevin Smith movie, not from.
What's that one where he's trying to get the immigrants out of? He's like an FBI agent faking to be a foreign film director or something.
Oh God,
it's like a true story about.
Is that
the 70s or something like that?
I was thinking of Gone Girl, but that's not what you're talking about, is it?
No. God, no.
Okay. I don't know.
How dare you?
You're not a fan of Gone Girl. I think that was based on a true story. That's why it popped.
You're talking
in my
about that
head.
shitty Kevin Smith movie, right?
No, Gone Girl isn't a Kevin Smith movie.
It
It's like
isn't?
based on a book or something that I think was based on a real story. I don't know. Fuck who. I'm just talking out my ass now. I could be wrong.
Maybe
about
I'm
that.
thinking of Tusk. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, either way, I think we're both not very optimistic about the future of Batfleck. So
I'm no. Well, yeah. You know.
what do you think the potential is here, though, seriously, for the worst comic book movie of all time becoming the best of all time? Do you think that's possible? Because I think most people who have seen Justice League all the way through, and I'm going to use a grain of salt with my opinion because, like I said, I fell asleep on the movie and I was drinking heavily when I watched it. So I don't have the most accurate memory of it, but I remember it really sucked. And everyone I talked to said it was the worst comic book movie they'd ever seen. Like, it was up there with like Iron Man 2, like just really bad.
Okay, for one, shut your fucking mouth. Iron Man 2 wasn't that bad. Don't compare it. But
It wasn't good.
I don't know.
I like Mickey Rourke as much as the next guy, but that wasn't a great movie.
Iron Man is like my favorite OG comic character, so I just love all the movies. Even the third one, which is trash, I'm still just like, it's not bad. But nonetheless.
I like the third one more than the second one, but I know that's a controversial opinion and most people disagree. But I actually didn't think the third one was as bad as most people said.
You know, I don't know. When you say the worst comic book movie, like I want to say, you know, you're right. And then I think about things like, you know, George Clooney's Batman. But then I'm like, that movie had great jokes in hindsight. It was just,
Arnold, man, he saved that movie.
Well, it was an original meme movie before memes were even
Yep.
popular. You'd look at that movie and you'd be like, bat nipples. Bat nipples. We were talking about bat nipples and we were like laughing and loved it at the same time. We're like, we're not mad that it exists. And in fact, in hindsight, we're glad it exists. You
It's
know,
like a gag.
because
It's like the movie equivalent of a gag gift.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect analogy. Right. But
Yeah.
so I don't know. Like, I don't want to say it's the worst movie because then there's things like the original Suicide Squad, which I think is way more trash. I think Justice League, the original Justice League, is just a tragedy. And I don't think we should really compare it, you know, because it's the shell of a movie, the husk of a movie that is now just starting to come out.
Okay, well, let me reframe the question then, because it's very arguable what is the worst and what is the best and all that. Let's just say, what do you think the odds are that after you watch the Snyder Cut, that you are going to declare it the best comic book movie of all time? What do you think the odds of that happening are? Because what is your favorite of all time if you had to pick right now? I think I know what you're going to say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, me too. Iron Man 1, then probably closely following behind would be Infinity War Part 1 in my book. But
yeah,
either way, it's highly
that or Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, Thor Ragnarok's up there too for sure.
That one's pretty good.
Yeah. What do you think though? What are the odds? Like, how shocked would you be if you just finished that movie and you're like, holy fuck, that was the greatest comic book movie I've ever seen? What give me a percent. What do you think the percent of you saying that is?
I always hate giving direct answers. Optimistic side, I'd say 60%. The pessimistic side would probably say 45%.
Interesting. That was a little bit higher than I expected. Yeah, that trailer does look good. I can see where you're coming from because I was blown away by that trailer. I'm like, this ain't the movie I remember falling asleep drunk watching.
It felt like a Snyder movie. Just the trailer. Right when you see Superman calling the Thunderbolt down and the echo starting of his voice, you're just like, all right, I'm getting some 300 vibes immediately. Just like the slow-mo here. This feels like Snyder.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I'll say this for sure, regardless of anything we've said so far. I'm just really looking forward to seeing Henry Cavill Superman some more, because I thought that was done, gone, over with, never going to happen, and I'm just going to be watching The Witcher from now on to see Henry Cavill in action. I'm pretty psyched that he's coming back as Superman, because he is, after Reeves, he's my favorite Superman. Not that there's many.
Well, I was going to say, I'm like, you're not really... Reeves was pretty much like comparing the Undertaker to everybody else before fucking Cavill came. All right, so it's not like you have much to choose from.
It's a solid point, but like all those like lame DC TV shows that had different versions of Superman, like Smallville, and I think there are some others that I never watched. But
yeah, that's true. The guy from Smallville deserves some credit.
Yeah, there aren't too many Supermans, not nearly as many as there are Batmans, but I really liked Henry Cavill as Superman. I really liked Man of Steel because of him and because of Zod. Yeah, that was such like what a home run Zod. Like how do you get better?
That was two great choices right there. No doubt. Michael Shannon and Henry Cavill together as Superman and Zod. They knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. Well, all right, so final question before we move on to our review of Willy's Wonderland. Do you think we're going to see more Darkseid in the Snyder Cut? Like how much more? Well, I call him Darkseid. You can fucking
get out of here. All right, I read comics. Start side. Well, shut your mouth.
I know you read comics, and I used to read comics, and I call him Darkseid, and that's what I've always called him. That's what I will continue to call him. What do you think of the amount we will see him? Because I don't remember ever seeing him in the original Justice League. I'm not sure if he was all in the second half or if he was just barely in it to begin with. But do you think we're going to have a lot more Darkseid on our hands in this cut?
I think we're going to have a lot more compared to, because I mean, what we got we didn't even get any in the original cut, right?
I don't remember seeing him in the original cut. So I think
there was a bonus that was leaked like after the film release where we saw his face or a CGI rendering of him or something.
God,
was that? I forget. But if you're not counting that, I mean, I think we're probably going to get at least 15, 20 minutes of like him being on the screen, and whether that's him in just this huge panning shot with an army or up close saying some words, I think altogether probably 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, in the trailer, we see a scene with him where, so he's in the movie in this cut. And I know that scene was new. I don't remember seeing that in the original. I just wonder how much of that we're going to see, if that was just like this one-off or if we're going to get significant screen time for him. Because after what they did to Apocalypse, we need Darkseid to prosper. We cannot let them ruin him like they did Apocalypse.
Yeah, I
laugh every time I think of it. He's like my favorite X-Men villain. He's one of my favorite comic book villains. He's a joke.
Why do I have to love things that just absolutely get bitch slapped by Hollywood? You know, it's like anime and comics; they get no respect.
It's okay because Olivia Munn is here.
No fucking respect, and it is uncanny how fucking much Olivia Munn looks like shit. Psylocke? Psylocke. Is that her name?
Yeah.
Psylocke, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, Olivia Munn has like that generic, like hot black-haired girl look that kind of fits with Psylocke. Like that sort of like dark, attractive
when I look at
woman.
like Jay Lee art, X-Men, Psylocke, or any iconic picture of Psylocke in a comic right next to Olivia Munn, Psylocke in the movie, it's crazy how much she looks like her.
It's too bad she couldn't act to match the looks.
Look, listen, all right, let's just end the conversation here. Don't you badmouth my wife.
Yeah, you know, on one hand, I'm really depressed about what's going to happen with X-Men under the mouse, the tyranny of the mouse. But then I look at like the past 10 years of what Fox did with X-Men. I'm like, it can't get worse, can it? Like they ruined Jean Grey, they ruined Apocalypse, they never brought Gambit out of the cellar once. Like,
every time it's just you say Apocalypse, I just think of him as walking out
5'3".
Every time,
Oh.
dude, it kills me, dude. Because I just think of this comic where fucking Wolverine picks his face up from a puddle and he's like, "Is there an earthquake happening?" And looks up and sees Apocalypse towering over him like a fucking behemoth. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's what we got.
I'm pretty sure that the Penguin from the original Burton Batman's was about the same height as Apocalypse. Maybe Apocalypse had an inch on him, but it was close.
It's been confirmed now. That wasn't Apocalypse. That was Ivan Ooze.
Oh, shit.
From the original Power Ranger, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie.
That is the greatest timeline. We need to make that canon right now.
It merged. It happened.
All right, Broadcaster Nickels. On that note, do you give the Snyder Cut the thumbs up, the thumbs down, or the dreaded side thumb?
Thumbs up. I'll give it a fat thummy.
Yeah. That trailer was really good. And a lot of the time when we preview movies, I base a lot of my thumb score on the trailer itself. And this is the best example of that, just being like 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. Like everything I saw in that trailer was great. The vibe was different. You talked about 300 earlier. Like some of the camera pans I was seeing in that trailer reminded me a little bit of 300. There's a lot of upside from that trailer that I'm feeling. Not to mention what you're talking about with Joker at the end with the "we live in a society" meme coming to life. That was just like the cherry on top.
I died. I died when I heard that. I was like, oh, God.
Speaking of death, there is a place of magic and wonder where death is prescribed by a man with sunglasses who never speaks. Broadcaster Nickels, are you ready to get to our review of Willy's Wonderland?
It's my birthday.
I have a present for you, Broadcaster Nickels. Follow me to the super happy fun room. And we're back with our review of Kevin Lewis's Willy's Wonderland. And the creators of this movie describe it as the following. A quiet drifter is tricked into a janitorial job at the now condemned Willy's Wonderland. The mundane tasks suddenly become an all-out fight for survival against a wave after wave of demonic animatronics. Fists fly, kicks land, titans clash, and the only side who will make it out alive is that of our hero, one motherfucking Nick Cage. Broadcaster Nickels, holy shit, there's a lot of production companies involved in this movie. Did you catch that intro?
Yeah.
Dude, like when it got to the 9th one, I'm like, wait a second, this has to be a gag, right? Like this is a meme now. Like towards the end there, it just got so extravagant.
I love my boy Nick, but going into any movie, you have to realize that he owed a lot of money. Okay? So these people that do these movies, you know, they're first timers or people that aren't given a lot of shots anywhere else, you know, and a lot of people like to pile on these endeavors, you know. So especially when you got a high budget name like Nick Cage involved, who may or may not be Ghost Rider coming up here. So
just right hot out the gates, Broadcaster Nickels. Is Willy's Wonderland a Ghost Rider prequel? Go.
Absolutely 100% confirmed. You heard it here, folks. First, folks.
In the great tradition of the Crack Cellar, I want to go right to the ending at the very beginning of the podcast. When it shows that final scene, it hones in on his glasses and you see the fire in the lens. Was that not the most Ghost Rider thing you've ever seen that wasn't in Ghost Rider?
Absolutely. That's it's funny you said that because that's exactly where I got the Ghost Rider vibes from. It was the only scene in the movie where you're like, oh, that was kind of Ghost Rider-ish.
It was on the nose, man. I couldn't believe it. But holy shit, man. I love that movie. What about you? Were you surprised about how much you liked it? Because I was going into it, seeing it as a meme movie. I thought it'd be entertaining for some chuckles, but it wasn't going to be on any top 10 lists or anything. I was blown away by how much I loved that movie. I was riveted by it. I loved every aspect of it except for a tiny, small few things, which we'll go into. But for like 99%, I thought that movie was just tits on fire.
Everything was out of the park besides, I would say, the editing. It's the most glaring part of the movie. There was a couple parts, and it was mostly with the kids, where there's a couple parts where you can see that the editor of the movie didn't quite go through it again to make sure everything was coherent. Because when what's her name? The main female lead, Liv.
Well, let's go with this. We have good girl and bad girl. Let's go with those monikers.
Well, I like where you're going with this, but there's a bigger female lead than bad girl, so that kind of can confuse potential viewers.
Well, no,
there's
old
the
girl doesn't
grandma.
count. Old girl doesn't count.
Counts.
We have
She's
good
a
girl, bad girl, and old girl.
Listen, I love the significance you're putting on bad girl. Believe me, I'm with you, all right? But for respect's sakes, the Chainsaw Massacre chick, old lady
well, hold on.
chick.
This just in. Broadcaster Nickels has gotten his blue check mark on Twitter.
Listen, I'm no simp, but...
Verified,
Anyway.
Broadcaster Nickels. Go ahead.
But nonetheless, Liv, I forget what I was talking about. You got me confused. You got me all hot and bothered with the hot and bad girl.
Yeah, you're gonna talk about Liv, the good girl.
But why was I talking about Liv?
That is a great question that only you can answer.
Yeah, you got me all fucking. You got me turned around.
All right. Well, I'll just say this about the movie. It's as low budget as I thought it was going to be, but this is the most well acted, well directed, well orchestrated low budget movie of all time. This is up here with like
No
the
doubt.
original Mortal Kombat movie, which was also super low budget and also fucking awesome, which is exactly where I'd put Willy's Wonderland. Like the money was just put in all the right places.
It was, especially Nick Cage.
First of all, I want to go right in to a new segment I'm going to call the Crackpot Prediction Hour. And it's actually only going to be about 30 seconds. And what we're going to talk about is the
Hot
fact
take.
that I called it. Maybe you agreed with me. I don't remember if you agreed with me or not, but in our preview of this movie, I brought up the fact that I didn't think he was going to talk in this entire movie and that he was going to be silent in the entire movie.
You said that, dude.
And
You called that shit.
fact check true, Broadcaster Nickels. He does not utter a fucking word in this movie.
That was a pretty good call. I won't lie. That was a solid call.
And he does some of the
How did
best
you pick
acting
up
he's
on
ever
that?
done with no lines.
How did you pick up on that?
I don't know. It just occurred to me when I was watching the trailer.
You're a connoisseur of the Cage so much.
I have seen
You're-
so many
much-
Cage movies.
So many movies, so many trailers, and you saw this one, and you're like, I didn't see a word, and I know mannerisms, and I'm just gonna say it right now. He's not gonna speak a word. This is gonna be a silent Cage film.
Yeah, it was, and it one of the. I'll just say
I call
right
you
now,
Negro Damas, dude.
If I have a Nick Cage top 10, this movie is in it. This movie definitely is in my Nick Cage top 10 now. Maybe higher, but I'd have to really think.
I think at this point there's a pre and post modern Nick Cage.
Oh,
top
like
10.
DC and AD.
Yeah,
for sure.
for
dude.
sure.
Because it
like,
was
it's
Ghost
like-
Rider. Ghost Rider was 0 AD.
I ran into this when making the patented 2.0 scale we're using right now, Nick Cage
Yes.
scale system, if you will.
Yes. Well, the money was put in all the right places for multiple reasons, as you just mentioned. Nick Cage is phenomenal in this movie, doesn't utter a line, but does more acting than a lot of people do in their movies with 150 lines. It was incredible to behold. I am such a Nick fan Cage. I love the meme version of Nick Cage.
Fan.
I love the horror.
Hold up. You just said Nick fan Cage. I'm such a Nick fan Cage.
Did I really say that?
Yeah, I loved it. But I
Okay.
loved every second of it, though.
Well.
It was appropriate.
This movie put me in the cage because I realized something about myself. I am a Nick Cage super fan. Like, I love this guy now. I've gone from him just being one of my favorite actors to really liking him to almost just thinking of him as like the messiah of Hollywood. Like, he's standing on top of this mountain with a book and a golden aura saying, "Follow me, my child. I will show you cinema."
You're absolutely right. I mean, I think I was there a little bit before you. You know, I'm a little bit, over the top with my emotional connections to things. So I think I got there maybe a couple seconds before you. What you're saying to me is just you're quoting the Bible, right? Right?
Because the Bible I wrote a few weeks ago, get with it.
But if I were to make an analogy of it, Nick Cage is like watching his movies is like watching a good anime battle, man. It's like it's like a fine wine. You have to appreciate it, right? Outsiders will just be like, this is gay cartoon weeboo shit, okay? But if you know, like, the Hunter x Hunter, like Cholo versus fucking Zardax, or I forget the family's name.
That was some next level weeb quotage. I love it.
You know, but it's just like those two. Like when you see that high level fight, you're just like, this is chess. This is 4D chess right here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And when you watch a Nick Cage movie like Willy's Wonderland, you're like, this is 4D fucking chess for Nick Cage right now. All right. People don't understand the level that Nick Cage is ascending to right now.
No, they don't. And I think that this movie could be a wake-up call to some of the people that just like they refuse to watch Mandy, they refuse to watch The Color Out of Space, like all these modern classics, these modern Nick Cage classics that we've been treated to over the last 8 or so years. They really started to build up, man, to the point where I think we're hitting critical mass with this movie, because this movie has serious mainstream appeal to it. First of all, this movie is a straight up archetype of late 80s horror. It isn't a late 80s horror, but it follows the exact archetype of how the story progresses, how the characters work. The story is high and tight. It's basically, it's like Scott Pilgrim versus the World meets Chucky, Child's Play. And
it's like 80s and 90s horror.
It really just has, okay, so let's go right to the good stuff here. What we both really want to talk about, and that would be the sex scene with Bad Girl. So at a certain point in this movie,
softcore.
This movie, it's basically when I say it's like 80s archetype horror, you can almost think about Friday the 13th. So you have a bunch of kids that are basically trapped somewhere that are getting murked one by one. But you have Nick Cage thrown into the middle of it. It is that archetype, though. So like each set of kids meets their death in a certain way, and it wraps the comedy into it in such a flawless, perfect way that it reminds me of like the middle Nightmare on Elm Street as well. So like Nightmare on Elm Street, originally just a straight up horror movie. But Nightmare on Elm Street pivoted into comedic horror towards the middle of its run. And that is a lot what this reminds me of, with like the just over the top cartoony Nick Cage fights with these animatronic demons. That basically, when I compared it to Chucky, it's because it's the exact same thing. In Chucky, this serial killer murderer did a satanic ritual to put himself into a doll. And that's like a group of Chuckies basically do the exact same thing to the Chuck E. Cheese animatronic things. So basically the same thing. But it does it in a way that just perfectly intertwines itself with like more modern takes on the way horror and comedy go, like Cabin in the Woods style. Like Cabin in the Woods was a horror movie, but it was high on the comedy. And I feel like this is a sort of evolution of that style of just continuing that old school vibe from the 80s, but in this new way.
For sure. I mean, Nick Cage just has this way, man. I mean, he can just turn anything he touches into gold. It just has to have. This movie is just a good example of everything coming together. To be honest, it just none of the actors were bad enough to weigh down the film. There wasn't one actor where I was like, God damn, like I was thinking about them at all. The story was solid. It was hokey, but it was a good hokey.
And that's how all those 80s horror movies were. They had hokey storylines that were solid, but hokey.
Yeah. There's not a real, if you were to put a finger on any weak link in the movie, it's not that bad. You know, it's a solid film. It is a solid fucking film.
Yeah.
And it surprises me to no end that after watching Jiu-Jitsu, I was like, okay, Nick, you're willing to dive deep to get some money. I get it. All right. You owe some money. My boy owes some money. He needs to write a couple checks. But Jiu-Jitsu sucked loose butthole. loose butthole. All right. And
not a good movie.
No. So going into Willy's Wonderland, I was like, I don't know. Yeah. And I was quickly corrected.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to kind of circle back to what I was originally talking about with a bad girl and her sex scene. So if you watch Friday the 13th, you know all about the archetype that this movie is based on. You have this set of kids. You'll see kid A here. Oh, something happens. Jason shows up, murders kid A. Then we go to, kid B and C. They're hanging out here. Something happens. Oh no, Jason shows up, kills them. You have that same thing going, but the meme of the 80s horror movies was always the nudity. There was always a late teenage, early college year sex scene where there'd be a hot chick with her tits out and a lot of blood and murder. That happened in every single
classic blood on the tits scene. Like, dude, it happens so stereotypically.
It's a meme. It's a straight up meme.
But it was good. It was good.
And they sort of brought it back in this movie. Again, it's modernized in the fact that she's wearing a bra. And I think that's a mistake. I think that they wanted to keep the rating. What was it, rated PG-13 or is it rated R? Do you know that for a fact?
I don't know. It probably was not rated R just because there's no nudity.
Yeah, the no nudity thing, because it just didn't fit, because you see that scene and you immediately know what you're watching. Like, this is like the scene right before Jason comes through the fucking, the dark side of the room and just kills the girl as she's having sex with the guy in the cabin on Camp Crystal Lake. Like, it's that sort of scene. But she just has a bra on, and it's like a PG-13 version of it.
Well, I
like the spirit, but I think they should have gone all the way.
Yeah. And I agree with you on a personal level, but to correct you a little bit, I think it is the equivalent, the modern day equivalent, because that shit just don't fly anymore with like topless scenes anymore. It is as far as they could take it without doing a full blown hokey sex scene and making the movie a B grade movie instead of more mainstream.
Yeah, they're trying to get mainstream appeal. I think that's what this movie was trying to do.
No doubt. In my own personal opinion, I would have just got rid of the sex scene and turned that into like a high tense sexual scene, than them getting killed off. I just wouldn't have had the sex scene period because there's no nudity, so there's just no appeal on either end. It's rather you go full sex scene and show some hokey porn or nudity or whatever and get those fans that whatever exist, or you don't do it at all and just kind of have that like fine line, high tense emotional.
Well, I think you do it and you show the tits. I think that's what you do, and I think it's my biggest criticism of the movie.
I'm disappointed I didn't see tits. Bad Girl, I need it. If you do porno, I won't be disappointed.
Yeah. Bad Girl was a nice piece of ass, and I also love the scene where she starts climbing the ladder, and all of the dudes run to the ladder to try and look up her skirt. That was also classic 80s.
Homeboys just like, everyone just back up, okay?
I love that, and I also loved the fucking soundtrack, dude. Did you notice how good the soundtrack in this movie was?
2 specific tracks were out of the park. The main theme park theme when he's playing the pinball table.
Yep.
And then the other one,
the final boss music, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It plays a couple cuts of it play earlier, but then the full part plays at the end.
Yeah. I feel like movie soundtracks are kind of in this weird dark age right now. I feel like most movie soundtracks suck, and this one was a breath of fresh air. It totally had like the early 90s video game vibes going with the soundtrack.
And what about like the weird general like weird no-name soda pop, punch pop, that's what it was called.
Energy drink.
Yeah, dude. It was kind of weird because if you look into it a little bit at the can, it looks like a can with a label wrapped over it, and you're just like, okay, is this some B grade budget effects, or is this like some fourth wall joke where it's like, this is a dude who's drinking and driving and wrapping energy drink labels over his beer, or like what's going on?
I love it. There's a crackpot theory for the crack cellar right there. It was actually booze.
But when the pinball table came up, right? When he finally spent all the time on the pinball table, I've hung out at pinball bars a lot. It's kind of a thing I did for a few years. And I know those people. And those are the type of people that do that type of shit. All right. So I was like, man, is Nick Cage like really studying his role right now? Or did the director like tell him about this type of person and he's really embracing it? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that could be. I didn't get that from it. The vibe I got is that was honest to goodness supposed to be an energy drink, and it kind of plays into the whole way that the movie is formed, in which Nick Cage is using a stopwatch the entire movie, and at every interval he drops whatever he's doing, and I do mean anything he's doing.
Yep.
And he runs for that energy drink. And he chugs the energy drink, and he's either working on the pinball machine, or then once it's fixed, he's playing the pinball machine. It's like this hero's journey intermission of the progression of caffeine intake and pinball progression. It's one of the most nerdy, crazy things I've ever seen, and one of the many reasons I love this fucking movie.
Yeah, I won't lie. I think it is the number one reason I love this movie so much. I really related with how he just dropped everything for the energy and the one task. He was just like, especially so the foreshadowing, he takes that switch. When he first meets the chick, he's just like, what are you doing, little girl? Give me that switchblade. He doesn't say anything, just takes it, leaves. And then when she's in danger and the stopwatch starts going, he's like, oh.
Well, you can
reaches into his pocket. All right, well, here's the switchblade. Good luck. And then he just goes back to drinking his soda and fucking playing pinball.
Yeah, that was legendary. Also, the fight scenes in general were just legendary. And I think the best one was the first one with the ostrich. What do you think? What's your favorite fight scene?
The ostrich my favorite fight scene with Nick Cage.
Well, no, Nick Cage versus animatronic beast.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
The ostrich for sure.
Yeah, it was tight, man.
It had the fucking well done.
It had the Kano fatality too.
Exactly. I was just about to say that. The fucking MK fatality with the spinal rip.
Dude.
Sub-Zero just fucking
And they're all like that too. Like the one with the ape in the bathroom, he does the fucking toilet curb stomp fatality on him.
I have a question for you though. Who is your favorite animatronic?
Now that's a tough one.
I'll give you mine.
Okay. You go first. I'll let you go first.
Tito the turtle was mine, just because he spoke in Spanish the whole time, and he sounded like a straight anime villain when he first spoke. Un dunde cuando sonido. I was like, "What the fuck?" I died, dude. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah, and he also was the last one to die too. After he goes Ghost Rider, he runs him over in the final scene.
He's the lingering one.
Yeah. Well, there were two lingerers, but yeah, we'll get into the other one.
He's the final lingerer.
A little later. Yeah. My favorite of the animatronics, I think, was actually the crocodile. Because I loved the scene with Good Girl sneaking in through the ducts. And Crocodile showing up, and the way that like he chased her to the duct entrance to Pixie's little forest or whatever the fuck that was, and like it showed you this view of him like sort of like chomping outside the grate, and then just like slowly backing off in this like really sinister way and disappearing into the duct. That to me, that is like the definition of horror. I love shit like that.
You actually described something really well done with the direction of the movie. When Good Girl is going through the ducts and runs into the alligator, because these kids are describing like they know what's in the park already, and she goes in alone, knowing the dangers, and she's going to the ducts, and then she runs into the alligator animatronic, and then she falls into the fairy Tinkerbell animatronics area. That's a really good direction in the art too, because she's like, it's almost like an RPG or like playing a Resident Evil game,
or a Guillermo del Toro movie, like
true,
Pan's Labyrinth. A little
it's
bit.
It's just really good example of not only direction but the aesthetic or the environment, using the environment to illustrate a clear direction of the environment and the storyline. Like, I'm sneaking in through this duct and I fall into the fairy animatronics area with the first, it gives you this idea almost like Zelda when you fall, like when you see a temple, like, oh, there's the fire boss, I love seeing that type of stuff, and it was really well done.
Yeah, one of the pitfalls of video game based movies is the lack of a progression system. And it really hurts the vibe of bringing a video game into the movie spectrum, because what makes a video game what it is almost entirely the progression of the game itself.
Absolutely.
And Zelda, like you brought up, is one of the perfect examples of that. Zelda has some of the most tight progression in the history of video games, like the older ones especially. The newer ones are a little different, but you take Link to the Past, games like that, where it's just like, there is this progression where you're going to fall into a crack in the temple and you're going to fall a floor down onto a platform that wasn't available when you were at that floor before. And that's sort of the way it felt when she was chased in that duct by the crocodile guy into the fairy's little forest. It had that sort of vibe to it. And this movie does that at every turn perfectly.
Yeah. And that no turning back vibe too, because like as soon as you fall out of the duct, like the alligator animatronic mouth comes out of the duct end, and like it's like dripping the oil or whatever. And she's like, well, I'm not going back in there, so it's like, it's just like one of those classic video games, where it's like, well, I can't go back the way I came in, like I gotta face this journey type of thing. It's the progression is really well done. It's very illustrated.
It is. And just kind of sticking with the kids a little bit, what did you think about the B story of this movie, which is basically Good Girl's journey? So basically the two main characters are the janitor, Nick Cage, and Good Girl. The B story is basically Good Girl, which starts with her getting locked onto a pipe with handcuffs by the local cop chief, aka Old Woman. grandma, whatever you want to call her.
You sound like a sexist bigot right now. All the female characters are good girl, bad girl, old girl.
Well, Nick Cage is the janitor, so it's
and then there's Nick Cage. That's the only name you know, Nick Cage.
But when I first saw this beginning to Good Girls part of the story, I was kind of I was starting to get worried. I was like, I hope that they don't ruin this movie by focusing too much on her and her little high school friends and all this stuff, which usually annoys me. Because let's face it, the portrayal of high school students sucks now. This is not Porky's. This is not Summer Vacation. This is not all of the great teenage portrayals of the 80s that actually teenagers were cool.
No shit.
Now teenagers
and actually do.
Yeah, now teenagers are little bitches. And they
Let's
don't
not
do
get
shit.
it wrong. Teenagers didn't change or anything. They still do the exact same things they were doing in the 80s, but for some reason, we want to pretend.
Yeah. So the modern portrayal of teenagers is basically Glee, the fucking reality TV show or whatever
everyone
the fuck that
does
is.
sing-alongs and jokes and is sexually pent up.
Yeah, and so whenever I see something like this in a movie, I immediately go to like, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to sit here and listen to a bunch of bullshit with dumb teenagers from the cast of Glee talking about their big problems with, oh, will I be selected for whatever? Does my boyfriend like me? Or am I? It's just, you think that's gonna happen, but instead, the B story with the kids was exactly like a horror movie from the 80s. Like, it starts off with this, like, sort of mystery, like, why would this cop, put her on this thing and lock her in a trailer and just leave her like that? That's not something a cop would do. They rescue her, you have your little banter, and they go on their little anti-horror villain journey, which is super... The way that they did it, it was just really true to form. Like, they didn't go too far with it. They kept it very strict to the confinement of the movie. It's all them going to this place, trying to set it on fire, realizing the janitor's in there. Good Girl says, hey, I'm not going to burn someone alive, so we're going to go in there and save him. And it just sets this whole thing into motion perfectly with the whole there is no turning back thing that you brought up earlier, which is so important. There isn't like a whole bunch of exposition with these kids. It's like they show up, they do something quick. Bye, kids. Back to Nick Cage for a while. Kids come back up. They're doing something very specific. It ends. Bye, kids. Back to Nick Cage. Like, there's no fluff or filler or like really reaching to try and give the kids more screen time for no reason. And I think that's one of the main pillars of this movie's success. And I also think it's going to bring this movie to the mainstream with kids. I think that when kids see this movie today, it's going to be just like when I was 7 years old and watched, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors for the first time. It's going to be that sort of vibe.
I hope so. I hope you're right, bro.
I do.
I would love to see Nick Cage appreciated by a younger generation. That would tickle my heart so much that I would be happy dying at this point. I'd be like, you know what?
Hell yeah.
People like Nick Cage. I'm all right.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm going to say right now that, so there's two girls, there's Good Girl and Bad Girl. And then there's three guys. There's the boyfriend of Bad Girl. There's the beta orbiter of Good Girl. And then there's just like this fifth dude who's kind of just there to make fun of the beta orbiter. He dies really early.
He dies the first death. Yeah. Surprising too, because I was looking for deaths, but I was like, really?
Mm-hmm. And what I feel like I'm gushing about this movie too much, but I'm really serious about this aspect of it. Again, sticking with the 80s horror vibes, each character was killed off in a way that fits their personality flaws. So Bad Girl and her boyfriend get murked while they're fucking in the satanic ritual room where all the murderers killed themselves to become the animatronic demons. So again, it's just like an 80s horror movie.
Which they know.
Oh, yeah, they do know.
As characters, they know.
Yes. And that's so in line with that. And it's just perfect. Beta Cuck guy dies exactly you'd think. He gets duped by a female animatronic that's just saying the most dumb bullshit lines to get him to come out and expose himself. And he falls for it. And it's just perfect with his character. Like everything about the way that all these kids die, spoiler alert, except for Good Girl, who ends up riding into the sunset with Nick Cage.
Questionable age.
Nah, I mean, if you're going to say like within the confines of the movie, yes, but the actresses involved are in their 20s, so it's not like...
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, we're not... Yeah. But I just really think that they nailed it with the way they portrayed these kids, the way they brought them in as 80s horror kids, the way that they kept in that theme with all the ways in which they were murdered, except for the first guy, who basically just gets, like, ambushed by ghosts and goblins, dude.
He gets the coolest fucking death, let's be real here.
Yeah, his was, like, the most shocking, too, because he didn't really... None of the death really started at that point yet, other than Nick Cage killing others. None of, like, people dying didn't start till this guy dies, and it's very... out of nowhere. Good shocking moment.
This actually brings me to a good point, and it's probably my biggest like gripe with the whole movie is the editing. Like it started in the bathroom stalls with Nick Cage, you know, when the gorilla comes down. It's a great scene. I love it. Don't get me wrong. All the scenes are awesome in my opinion, but there's just like the editing is so terrible in some parts. Like when he opens the fourth bathroom stall and the gorilla attacks him. How am I supposed to believe that there's no floor tile or ceiling tiles broken? So he didn't come from the ceiling. He wasn't in the stall. He clearly wasn't in the fucking bathroom. Where did he come from? He just appeared out of like like when you watch the scene over, he came from the ceiling. But it's just like there's things where you're just like, man, I can see that you had multiple takes of the scene or multiple ideas of the scene and you cut it together to make it work, which I commend you. But at the same time, you guys like, and that's not the only scene, like where the ghost and goblin stabs that boy in the back. It's like there was no foreshadowing where like that dude was in the background on the stage, you know, he didn't move at all. There was no like quick cut where it showed like first person view of an animatronic sneaking around or making a noise, or
it's a specific style of editing.
Yeah,
and it is a very common one in horror movies.
Yeah, it's just so jarring. There was what
they expect you to do is to suspend disbelief in that case, because like their argument would be if like you were talking to the director right now, I'd say, well, wait a second, you're dealing with supernatural animatronic demons. Why do you not think they can't teleport or whatever? That would be their argument. I kind of agree with you on one hand. I'm not a huge fan of that style. I'm much more a fan of, have you seen Hereditary?
Sounds familiar, but I don't think
it's a horror movie that came out a few years ago. Well, like there's this scene in Hereditary where like the way that they edit it and cut that movie is you'd be in this scene where nothing's wrong, but like you have this person who's like just kind of the focus of the scene, and it starts on them, and then it'll like slowly pan, and it'll slowly pan, and like it'll slowly pan up towards the ceiling, and eventually the camera will get to a point of the ceiling where you see like a demon hanging on the wall like a spider. And you see them there, and then they move. I like that style of horror much more than the style where it's like they just pop out at you and they're just there and there's no foreshadowing. Like, you should watch Hereditary, by the way. That's a great horror movie.
For sure. I mean, it's one thing to have something pop out on you. The main gripe is at that particular point in time when that guy dies, you've never seen that animatronic. There was no established scene with him. It's just
he
like,
was the wild card, wasn't he?
Yeah. He's like, here I am behind you with this giant fucking buster sword. I'm just going to stab you through. It's like there was not even a smoking gun at any point before that. There was no showing the sword. There was no showing the animatronic. There was no showing like the importance of that dude's character. It was just kind of like sword through the chest by a dude you've never seen before. And I think that's the jarring part. Like that's like the editing part that kind of kills me, where it's like, because you know that the way these movies are filmed, they film so many scenes and they know everything's connected. It's just their job to like make the viewer realize how things are connected. And that particular editing, it's like they never really told the viewer what that animatronic was. They never showed that animatronic. They were just like, this guy dies from this animatronic, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then the animatronic dies, and it's just like, I'm not looking for character depth. I'm not looking for some character building arc for that animatronic, but at the same time, have like, I don't know, a minute, dedicate 60 seconds to foreshadowing that animatronic that's about to kill that character off that you clearly paid a good amount of money in this film to be a part of.
Yeah. And another weird thing about the Ghost and Goblins animatronic, while we're on the subject, is I think he's the only one that doesn't shit talk. I think all the other ones shit talk, right? Except for him.
He is the only silent one.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure he's the only one that doesn't say a word.
Yeah, it was interesting. It seemed like he was almost tacked on at the end, but I appreciated his scenes so much. Just like the kill he did on that kid was like probably the most reminiscent. Like it literally was like Jason stabbing the machete through the chest, just like Friday the 13th.
It's the F-class kill for sure. He had the assassin kill.
But you're right that he is never established. And it's almost like he just came out of nowhere in the movie, then dies immediately, and like there's no real.
But same thing with even like, again, it's just not. It's none of the content is bad. It's the editing. Alligator, for instance, that one scene. We go back to the ducks. None of the animatronics are established at that point. I get it. It's at the mysterious stage at that point, right? You're wondering what the scare is going to be. And the alligator is the first one. But it's just like, why is the alligator in the ducks? There's at none of the points did it show like a first person view of like the alligator becoming aware, or any of the animatronics becoming aware, realizing the girl was in the duck. None of that. There was not even the slice minutia, right, of like awareness. It's just like, here's the alligator. It's super fast. It crawls through the ducks. It's, there's just some editing. The same thing with the gorilla. That's why I brought up the gorilla. It's just weird, jarring editing in the movie that kind of drags it down a little. I think it's the worst part of the movie. It's just the editing in general. There's just some parts where you're like, especially the kids, like the trailer, where the good girl Liv gets put in the trailer by old girl, which I don't know her character's name, but it's just like, the dialogue is clearly getting you to try to think that like, oh, there's some rapport with these characters. It's not till 3/4 of the film till they explain why Liv and old girl are important to each other.
Yeah.
It's poor editing, because I know all those scenes are there, right? It's their choice to like kind of illustrate, or like to explain to the viewer what's important first and what comes second.
Well, you're actually talking about direction and editing, the way that you're talking about it, and it's a specific style, and I think that you just really don't like that style, which is fair. Everyone has like their specific ones. It doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you. I've seen it in a lot of different horror movies, but it's not my favorite style either. So I will definitely agree with you that
it's like time skipping. It's like the day before. It's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I don't want to know. We're not doing this.
Yeah. One of the things that I dislike the most about this movie's direction, I guess, would be the flashbacks that were narrated by characters in the current time. So we have one with Good Girl, and then we have one with Old Girl in the car with like that rent-a-cop deputy guy.
Yeah,
I didn't like the way. I didn't like the way that they framed that, especially the first one with Good Girl. It felt really cheesy. Her delivery of the lines just felt really like it didn't fit with the rest of the movie. It also didn't fit with the scene, like why you would be telling him this right now in this situation when you're like literally your life's at stake and you're surrounded by demonic animatronic demons and you're like taking this 5-minute break to fucking tell him like this campfire story about how everything started. It seems more like something you talk to him about in the aftermath, like once you're in the car with him jetting to the motel, like where you're about to get banged by Nick Cage, like you think you'd be telling him about it then, like in like the pre-glow.
No doubt.
But
I mean,
instead,
I don't know. You lost me, but I mean, like, I agree with you with Nick Cage taking her back to the hotel. Like, it's a solid move. It's a solid.
I just don't think that it fit with the movie, and like the way the pacing was outside of the flashbacks. It just felt really inserted and a little jarring. I didn't like that, but it was so quick and over with so fast that it doesn't bother me that much. It didn't really take much away because they were very brief with the backstory. They had like a collection of scenes with like these Chimo looking serial killers that are dressing in the suits and killing the kids, bringing them back to the super happy fun room, which, by the way, is the best thing that comes out of that preamble. That whole backstory is, well, they'd take an unsuspecting family back to the super happy fun room. And I'm just like, wait a second.
Just like that was the backstory is that it's just another family. I was like, damn, dude, they were murking multiple families with this routine. Like no one picked up on it. I mean, how many families went down? Like 8, 10? They were like, everybody in the town, the sheriff in the town was like, you know what? I think something's up here. It's like, what the fuck?
I did like the portrayal of the adults, like the cowardice of adults. Like that was another theme with old school horror movies, that there was always like this level of cowardice with all the adults. Like they'd never face what was happening to their kids, and they'd always kind of pretend like it wasn't happening. And no stronger example than Nightmare on Elm Street, which we've been talking about before. That's sort of like an undercurrent to Nightmare on Elm Street, is that the parents like don't want to admit it because they don't want to admit what they did to this guy that made him into Freddy Krueger. And like, it's like this big conspiracy and secret. Huge vein in this movie as well. Like the exact same type of storytelling where all the adults are kind of in on this conspiracy theory to like appease these demons and kind of bury it under a bridge and pretend like it doesn't exist, except for this one day of the year where they trick some poor fuckers with the tire strip that,
for sure.
There's a very specific formula to this movie, and I think it adheres to it to a T. And I really appreciate that. I also really appreciate the dramatic standoff shots between Nick Cage and Willy that start with the beginning of the movie with the sign on the building where it just shows him kind of like adjust his glasses and stare at Willy, and then shows
the
Willy staring at him.
Dude. Just the shakedown at the beginning is just like, I'm eyeing you, motherfucker. I'm going to take you down at the end of this movie.
And it continues. There's like 4 scenes where like he'll kill one of them and then he'll stare at Willy. And then Willy will stare at him, and it'll just be this
every time he
dramatic
backs and tags a motherfucker, he looks at him and he says like, another one down, Willy, when you up.
That again, another just brilliant stroke with this movie. Like that meme in this movie was excellent, and I enjoyed every moment of it.
When he waves that shit, he comes out the door at daylight and just throwing a fucking animatronic at the trash, the Tinkerbell chick, foreshadowing, quote unquote. But he just like waves the sheriff. And she's just like, son of a bitch. I loved it, dude.
Oh, shit. Yeah, it was really good. What'd you think, though, about when they fall through the ceiling? Because I thought that was the most comically absurd part of this movie.
It was it's like like I said at the beginning of this podcast, the Resident Evil style trope, it's like Leon falling through the ceiling. Well, I guess I gotta look for the president's daughter another day. It's just one of those moves,
Yeah. The setup for it was kind of hilarious because it was basically a bad girl's boyfriend basically saying, yo, Beta Orbiter bitch, you're not going to be able to get this girl by kissing her ass all the time. I'm out. And he drops the mic, right? And Beta Orbiter like becomes like enraged with his swollen amygdala and just like tries to tackle this motherfucker. And dude, like it's so comical the way they fall through the ceiling. It's like the boyfriend was standing on a thin piece of like 3/8 inch drywall with absolutely nothing else. And just the weight of both of them being on the square just makes it collapse. And as you see everyone fall into the ball pit, it shows like the ceiling debris fall down. And it's literally just a couple pieces of thin drywall, just like you would expect. So it's like, are we supposed to believe?
Like, how did they even get over that fucking thing?
So it's like, At first,
there's 8 of you on the fucking roof. It's like
so at first,
2 steps.
At first, you just want to be like, oh, well, it's just really cheesy, corny shit, where it's like, it's unbelievable. But then it's like, well, wait a second. They confirm the actual thing that would have to be true for this to happen, right? So when they fall down, and they don't show a bunch of beams of wood falling down. They show a couple of thin strips of drywall falling down. So they're literally saying, hey, you know how in your head you were just racking your brain to how you could possibly fall through a ceiling like that? Guess what? We just confirmed that's true. You can't make fun of us. It's almost like that's what they're trying to do with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like it's the equivalent of plot armor for the director and the writer.
Hanging a lantern on it, yeah.
Yeah, hanging a lantern on it. Yeah, exactly. They're like, we warded our shit, all right? Like, you can't come at us now.
And speaking of the Beta Orbiter, I think we just gotta give a few moments to that fight scene. Was that not just one of the greatest moments of the movie? That whole scene?
You talking about when that boy gets his neck broken?
Dude, it was so perfect. Like
I saw it coming from a mile away. Usually in a movie, I'm super surprised by that moment, and I'm like, you know what? Fucking A. Good for you guys. You fucking subverted me. I love you. But this time I was like, you know what? You guys are so cool. I'm already picking up on your coolness. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like so when his neck broken, I was like, I saw that coming from my way, but I still respect it.
What I loved about that scene the most is the escalation. So like the first part of the scene is super slow. It's like her giving like this little fake speech, like, you can sense the good in me. You trust me. You know I'm different from the others. Blah, blah, blah.
It was like watching adult Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Go bad.
and you know, the guy like the total Beta Orbiter cuck he is, like, it takes 10 seconds for him to just become convinced that this evil robot is like his friend.
He's still suffering from swollen amygdala.
And I loved how he gets up, he reveals himself to her, and then the girl that he's beta orbiting shows up. And this is the part I love about it, the escalation from here. So it's like slow, 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 slow. Oh, hey, guess what? This one's different. We're going to help her. Neck break, snap. Hey, bitch, you want to play? Like, that was so good. Like,
it was end scene. It was just like, no, we're not having this connection. End scene, next scene. You know, I loved it. I loved it. It was really respecting the viewer.
Yes, yes. This movie's full of moments like that where it respects the viewer. And what'd you think? I mean, we already talked about the ending a bit, but overall, what did you think about this ending? Because I think horror movie endings are usually better than the average movie ending. I think that horror movies usually have good endings. Most of them do. I think that's one of the features of a horror movie, is that they usually have great endings. This movie was no different, in my opinion. I loved the ending. What did you think about it?
Oh, I loved the ending too. This movie did not... If you were thinking of a well-fortified fortress, right? All 4 walls, strong. Ceiling, strong.
Well... I mean, metaphorically, the ceiling was strong.
right. But I mean, I was really waiting for a part in this movie to say, "All right, this is the B grade moment," you know. But this movie has all the hallmarks of a AAA budget horror comedy. But with a budget of, I don't know,
very low.
Like a B. Budget. I don't want to say a B movie because it's not. Like, they could afford Nick Cage, obviously,
and Freebird.
And it wasn't.
I was surprised when Freebird started playing.
Good point. I forgot about that. But yes, Nick Cage and Least Freebird. Wow.
Wow.
Kapow. Cacao. Yeah, you're right though. That's not B grade quality, right?
No, they just inked every dollar out of this budget and just turned it into gold.
I think you said it at the beginning of the podcast. Well spent. Every dollar well spent.
Yeah, and so I guess the ending is this. There's two parts to the ending. First of all, it's Tex and the mechanic showing up, with the mechanic being like, "Yo, dog, here's your sick ass car from the dead janitor in there that you get to keep," because of course he's in there dead, obviously, you know. And Tex is like, "Yeah, always good to put one new one in my collection." And then he's like, "Well, are you gonna come with me and check the body?" He's like, "No, I'm not going in there. Fuck that." And he calls him a little bitch, which I like. That was a cool little moment. And he goes in and he just finds Nick Cage just dressed perfectly, great condition, the whole place perfectly clean, like Mr.
Love that
Miyagi
look
style.
he gives him too when he comes out the door. He just looks at me. He's just like, and
the dude is just befuddled to the point where it's like he knows not what to do other than just to hand that man his keys. That's what he does. And so Nick Cage gets his keys, just walks out.
The quick change of heart, though. He goes from like being fucked to like going outside, and he's just like, "Wow, damn, it's over."
That's one tough hombre.
It was almost like watching Boss Hogg and his fucking associate. I forget his name, but just thinking they got over on the Duke boys, and then they realized that it was all a sham.
Yeah, that's exactly what it reminded me of. That whole character of Tex reminded me out of something like from that.
Oh, Boss Hogg. You reminded me of Boss Hogg.
For sure, dude. But so this is where, so basically Good Girl has been slowly developing this crush on Nick Cage throughout the movie. And it starts with the first kill where
slowly?
her friend,
I don't know. Those eyes at the beginning were like, "Fuck me, Nick Cage."
Yo, they were, you're right. It started pretty hot and heavy for sure. So basically, and I love this too, because this is very anti-PC the way this love story unfolds. She falls in love with him because she sees him beating people to death against walls. Like the first part where she starts to fall in love with him is when she beats the a Ghost and Goblins guy to death. Remember the kill for that was like he was just beating his head against the wall over and over again.
Yeah.
It pans the Good Girl and she's just looking at him so longingly as he's doing this. and then there's another one where he goes in to kill Crocodile after Crocodile kills a bad girl and her boyfriend. And she gives him the same googly eyes as he murders that one. This girl is falling in love with a toxic male. This is toxic masculinity, Broadcaster Nickels, and it's the cornerstone of this woman's attraction for Nick Cage. And it all culminates with the scene with the Beta Cut killer, where she comes in, Beta Cut gets killed, neck snapped, and she turns on her, and then Nick Cage shows up, and it's like, oh, Nick Cage is about to kill her for her, and that's when one of the famous stopwatch goes off. And he's like, here's your knife back. I'll be with you shortly. Good luck. And she didn't fall out of love with him for this. She embraced it. She fucking went to town with this bitch, held out as long as she could. And then after Nick Cage was done, drinking an energy drink and playing some pinball, he shows up and just murks this bitch in front of her. And that's when the final nail in the love coffin comes in. Like, she just looks at him like, oh, I'm in, Nick Cage. So the ending, going back to the ending, he walks out with his car keys and he sees Good Girl just staring at him in the parking lot. Again, with longing eyes. This bitch is in love with Nick Cage. And he kind of just does this move where he looks away from his car and kind of gives her this weird pseudo nod, then gets in the car, and then Good Girl just gets in the car too. No word. Again, Nick Cage does not utter a word in this movie. There has been no conversation between these two. They just know. And Good Girl gets in the car, and they just fucking ride off into the sunset. But right after that, we have Tex with the mechanic be like, oh yeah, like you said,
who we refer to as Boss Hogg, aka
Boss Hogg,
the Burt Reynolds Boss Hogg, the good Boss Hogg.
Yeah,
and Sorrel Brook. That's not, or Brook, sorry, Boke. God damn. I'm sorry, Cyril. My bad, dude.
All right. Well, for the purposes of this statement, I'm going to say Boss Hog and Fat Man are in the car celebrating, like, oh, yeah, he actually killed the demons. This is what's up. I can actually reopen this business. And he was like, drinks are on me tonight. And they get in the car, and then they see one of the other Stradlers, Pixie Girl, show up. And she just fucking opens a Zippo lighter and just blows up the car. I loved that scene. It was super corny. I think it was the corniest part of the entire damn movie, and I loved it anyway.
Yeah, it was. I think it's probably the cheesiest connection too, because when at the beginning of the movie, when the Boss Hog throws the lighter because it won't work, and it hits the garbage and goes into the mud, you're like, well, that's clearly foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole movie goes by, and you're like, oh, well, I guess they're not going to use it. And then Tinkerbell uses it. You're like, all right, that was a bit of a stretch, but all right,
but
I guess.
Yeah, and then we go to the final scene that we've already talked about a bit with the Ghost Rider fire and the glasses and the running over the
probably the biggest foreshadow / meta shadow of them all. Let's be real.
Yeah, and this is where we establish that this is actually a prequel to Ghost Rider. And who knows what Nick Cage does with Good Girl after that scene closes, because it does like the Acme like fisheye closing in fade out, which to me it cements this movie into
another
just legendary
status of a budget director / production house. They're like, let's use a stock outro effect.
I'm not gonna lie, I half expected Bugs Bunny to show up.
I wanted to hear the sound effect.
Oh, shit. Well, as you know, Broadcaster Nickels, here in the Crack Cellar, we have a segment called The Hit, the Miss, and the Whiff. What is your hit?
Dude, Tito the Turtle, bro. Tito the Turtle. I know it may have not, the people that have seen this, that may be listening to or watched the movie that are listening to this, that know who Tito the Turtle is. Maybe they don't think he's as funny, but to me, I don't know. As soon as I heard the Spanish dubbing of that turtle, I fucking died, dude. I was like, good. This is like a Japanese anime villain right now. He's like the only one that speaks another language. And then on top of that, it's only the beginning of his introduction. It's super good. And then as he's getting beat down, it's kind of like B grade. Like he doesn't have any too good at hitters lines as he's getting beat down. But then at the very end, he's the last one. He's just sitting in the road. I love it, dude. Yeah, it's hard to quantify as you're talking about it, but like when you hear his Spanish dubbing, it's so bad, dude.
It's perfectly and intentionally bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those scenes stand out in my memory because like you get this real creep vibe from him. Like he has like this really creepy, not creepy in like the ooh scary sense, but like creepy in like the I wouldn't leave my kids alone with this guy sense.
I don't want to butcher Spanish any further because I have respect for the Spanish language, but it's like when she's like trying to shoot the shotgun and then he just holds out his palm and there's the shotgun shell and he says in Spanish, he's like, "You looking?" Yeah, I died, dude.
That was great.
I fucking died.
Yeah, that's a really good hit. My hit is what I call the Punch Energy Arcade Dance Macabre.
It's a good hit.
Timed with a trusty stopwatch. So we've already talked about this, but my favorite part of this movie, and I think it's the biggest hit of this movie, is the ongoing arc of Nick Cage with his stopwatch. At every interval, drops whatever he's doing, goes to the fridge, grabs a Punch Energy drink, cracks it open, starts chugging, and gets to work on that arcade machine. And each time he gets a little bit further, and then you get to the point where he's like actually kicking ass on the arcade machine and doing like fucking Saturday Night Fever dance spins and shit in front.
Oh man, I loved it. I loved the dancing queen fucking head fucking strafe thing. That was awesome.
It was so good. Like, it was just so fucking good. And it really is like the bone structure to this movie. Like, everything comes off of this. If this wasn't here, I don't think this movie would have even been half as good. And everything great about this movie just kind of grows off this skeleton, which is the Punch Energy Arcade Dance Macabre broadcast.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. It's a good linchpin.
Yes. That being said, Broadcaster Nickels, what is your miss?
The miss. I think the miss is the editing, like I was talking about. I think it's the only weakness to this movie, where it's just like there's some moments where, like at the beginning of the movie, you're like, I feel like the way you're directing this movie right now, I should know more about these kids. Like, I should at least know a little bit more about this old lady and this live chick, good girl, but I don't. I just know this is the bad girl.
I just know she wants to be bad.
Yeah, I just know she wants to be bad, but she, like the first scene, you know, it's like, here I am in front of Willy's Wonderland. I'm just gonna set it on fire. That is literally the scene.
Yep.
Here I am, live, gasoline, lights lighter. Here's sirens. Set only line. Oh shit. Then in handcuffs. And goes to a trailer, and she's acting like she's been in this trailer so many times, and she's like, fuck you to this old woman sheriff, like she knows her. It's like, but you don't, none of that is explained at all. You're just like, oh, this crazy Hills Have Eyes sheriff lady just abducted this hot bad girl chick. That's all I know. And then randomly the whole squad comes and like knows, the whole squad just knows she's there, right? She's like, oh, the trailer. We know she's at the trailer. They didn't foreshadow that they were following the cop car. They didn't foreshadow that the squad knew that this was a common location. They didn't do any of that. There's just so many points in the movie where you're just like, I feel like you filmed an hour and a half and I got about 10 minutes of it in this particular scene, you know, where they film so much and they're like, all right, we need to edit this down into a good movie. And the editor did it. He did a fucking knockout job, but there was just some weaknesses. Yeah, exactly. There's just some weaknesses you can't fix. You're like, this is the cost right here. I made it as flawless as possible.
So just out of curiosity, if first say all of the problems that you have with like the lack of context to some of these scenes, if they added about 40 minutes to this movie, and instead of it being 1 hour, 38 minutes,
I'd say they only about
20. Yeah. Do you think you would have actually liked the movie more, or do you think it would have hurt the movie? Because I'm not sure.
I think it would have hurt the movie.
Yeah.
And this is why I don't care too much, is because of what you're bringing it up. Exactly. It's just like, it's a sacrifice that needed to be done.
I think it,
to make it streamlined and well done. They're like, we don't need that shit. Cut the fat off. Sure, it makes some things a little up in the air, but the viewer can figure it out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, my miss is no nudity. What the fuck? What the fuck? Listen, you did everything right in this movie to just make it a perfect homage to that style of horror that I grew up on. And it's like you got all the way to the bottom of the 9th inning, bases loaded, and you struck out. Like, I get that you want to appeal to a mainstream audience. Let me tell you something, Kevin Lewis. Kids find a way. Nightmare on Elm Street was rated R, my friend. Friday the 13th was rated R, my friend. I found ways to watch those movies as a very young child. You can find a way. You do not need to sacrifice things like that to get to whatever rating you want to get. I don't know exactly why they did it or how they did it or like what rating it actually is, because it's a streaming only movie, and these rating systems are starting to get a little murky because the theater system is about dead essentially, and all movies are just coming out on streaming, and I don't know exactly what the point of cutting the nudity out was, but this was the definition of that classic Friday the 13th scene with the topless girl having sex and dying as she's having sex, the hubris of the moment, the bloody tits. This is a rite of passage for young boys.
On the wall, hubris, dude. Let's go into the murder room, the famous murder room, and then talk about how famous the murder room is, and then have sex.
Yeah, this is like, you had the moment and you got all the way to the finish line and you're 1 inch from the finish line and you died of a heart attack. It is my biggest gripe with the movie. And I know it sounds really shallow. It's like, oh, no tits, huh? That's your big complaint. Listen, it's not a big complaint. This is one of my favorite movies I've seen in years. I love this fucking movie. But if I have to pick something, I think they dropped the ball on that. I really think they should have just eaten the R rating and put the tits in.
Yeah. I agree with you, man. It would have, how you say, encapsulated the full trope,
yes,
of the 80s/90s horror. You know, the fake arterial blood splatter over the perfect bombshell double D tits. You know, it's just like one of those things where you're just like, it puts the cherry on top. You know,
it could have, but that cherry was stolen from us, Broadcaster Nickels. That being said, what is your whiff?
The whiff. What is the whiff? That's a hard one. I didn't think about this one too much.
I had a hard time with the whiff as well. This is a really good movie.
I think the whiff, honestly, if I'm really digging deep and just personally, if I'm not thinking about it too much, I think Tex. And the tow driver, they were a good duo. And watching them at the end kind of do the Dukes of Hazzard, like Boss Hogg and assistant, I forget. I want to remember the assistant. Oh, Sheriff Roscoe. Yeah,
Roscoe.
Roscoe and Boss Hogg. It's like, it was like watching them. They even had the Texas horns on the car and everything, you know. So it's like when they're like, well, hot damn, we did it. It's a good day. So let's celebrate. Drinks are on me. And so it's like, man, watching that, I was like, man, I wish I would have got more of them in the movie.
Yeah, if they were going to add another 15, 20 minutes to the movie, I think that's where I would have wanted to go to, is those two. Yeah. I would agree with you there. My whiff is the narrated backstory flashbacks. I think that they were poorly done. And the second one with the grandma, with old girl, was totally unnecessary and should have just been cut. The first one was at least necessary, but I just think they did it the wrong way. I like the backstory. I like that they kind of took like the Child's Play Chucky style backstory and kind of applied it to Chuck E. Cheese. Like it's even like a wordplay. Chuck E. Cheese, Chuck E. Child's Play. Like it all works perfectly together. But I think that they could have done it in a better way. And listening to Good Girl narrate it as it's happening in the flashback was just really cringy. Her delivery was bad. She was pretty good acting most of this movie. I think her worst acting in the movie was while she was reading the script for this backstory. You could just sense in the words that she didn't really know what was going on, and she was just like, okay, I'm reading this shit. Didn't work for me.
She's a famous actor too, right? She's from like Hills Have Eyes, or not Hills Have Eyes. She's from House of the Dead, isn't she?
I have never seen Good Girl in anything except for
Old Lady.
Old Girl.
Yeah, Old Girl.
Oh yeah, she was.
Isn't she from Texas Chainsaw? She's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's where she's from. She's from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It, dude. I totally forgot about that. She's like a horror legend.
She is a horror. Hold on, I gotta look this up now. Yeah, she's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I don't know what she's from, but now that you say that, I know she was in a horror movie that I've seen, like a good one. Like I can see her face now in my memory as a different character once you brought it up. I'm not sure what it is, but I know for certain you're right about that. She was definitely in a different horror movie that I've seen that I liked a lot. What I was going to say about Good Girl is that she was in a show. The only thing I've seen her in was a show called The Last Ship, which is like a post-apocalyptic sort of show that is over now. It had Adam Baldwin from Firefly in it. It was a pretty good show. military based. If you're an SG-1 fan, you'd like the last ship. But yeah, most of the actors in this movie are no names except for Cage, Good Girl, and I guess Old Girl. Now that you bring that up, so good call.
Dude, yeah, she's
call.
super famous. She's super famous. She's been in all kinds of stuff, dude. She's in Pearl Harbor. She's in Jag. She was in fucking.
Oh God, she was young in Jag. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
dude,
I remember her now in Jag.
Yeah.
Damn.
She was. Gosh, she was in Donnie Darko. She was in Speed with fucking Keanu.
Oh
shit, she was in Speed. Bro.
Damn. Wow.
Yeah, she's old school. No Country for Old Men, which I don't remember at all in, but apparently she was in that. Yeah, American Gods, which you should definitely check out. Don't get discouraged, man. Watch that.
I don't know, man. Marilyn Manson got kicked off, didn't he?
I think Marilyn Manson got kicked off reality right now. So rest in power.
Broadcaster Nickels, as you know, here in the Crack Cellar, we use the official, patented Nick Cage rating system. On that system, what do you rate Willy's Wonderland?
I mean, this might be somewhat of a controversial take.
Oh, drama. Let's hear it.
I'm going to give it a Con Air.
Oh.
I'm going to give it a solid Con Air.
Solid A. All right.
I mean, how could I not?
Yeah. If you went lower than that, I'd tell you to check your vision.
It's just... It's from an outsider's point of view, you're like, man, these guys just love Nick Cage. They're just going to give him nonstop.
Which is true. Let's be fair. It's true.
Let's be true. It is fair. But let's not hesitate here. Look at it. Do some deep soul searching. Watch this movie. Come back to me. Come back to us. Come back to the cellar. Okay? And tell us that it is not A, or maybe even semi-S tier. Okay? Movie was solid.
Yes, and that is quite a good foreshadowing for my rating, which is one face-off. I'm going to give this my first face-off of the year 2021. I loved every second of this movie, with the few exceptions being very brief, and I didn't even really dislike them as much as I just thought they could have been done better, which, we've already talked about all those spots. None of those spots were deal-breaking. None of them were even close to deal-breaking. At worst, they were minor annoyances. On the whole, I think this is one of the greatest Nick Cage movies of all time. It's one of my favorite movies of recent memory. It's up there with Mandy. It's up there with anything recently I've seen with Nick Cage. I would put this in the conversation for top 3 Nick Cage movies of all time. Now, that's a fucking lofty thing to say right there, because as you know, there are a lot of good Nick Cage movies, and they are also featured on our Nick Cage rating system, as you know. I would put this up in the running for top 3. I don't know if it would, if it all shaked out, if it would actually be in the top 3, but it's up there and it's in consideration for me. I wonder if we'll ever get a Nick Cage movie this good ever again. That's how good I think this movie is. I think this could be the high watermark for Nick Cage.
I think it's the high watermark for Nick Cage and budget, house, and production. Like, I just... Like, when you look at this and you're like, how little money was involved, it was good.
It was all heart.
It's all heart. And it's the essence of what makes good movies good movies. You need money, obviously. You got Nick fucking Cage in there. You need money and you need an idea. But at the same time, it just goes to show you that, like, even when all things considered, you're small fry coming to the table, that if you have heart and soul in the talent, you just your presence is tenfold. You know, it's just, you can't fake that shit. You really can't.
You can't teach it.
Yeah, you can't fake it. It's like everything that came to the table to make this movie for all things and purposes is just shit. But there's some special. It all came together and it made a good recipe. But everything separately, you're just like, this is going to be bad. You're wasting your money. This is a schlock movie. But they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. I think that this movie is going to go down in history as a cult classic, and a very strong cult classic. I think a new generation of kids that are going to grow up watching this movie are going to turn this into something along the lines of like the Rocky horror picture, like stuff like that. That's just like really, really just cemented into like the lore of horror. Like the horror genre.
This is like the new Clowns from Mars.
Oh,
you know,
Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yeah, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That's what it was. That's what this is. It's kind of like it's like just that new benchmark for that type of movie.
It's like the perfect version of that type of movie.
Yeah, you're like, when you go to recommend it in the future, you're just like, it's just hokey, it's funny, it's horror.
I'm a huge fan of Killer Clowns Out of Outer Space, as you know. I think that you watched that with me, right? Like, I'm sure that I introduced you to that movie.
No, I actually watched that for like my 13th, my buddy's like 13th birthday. Like
you never saw, dude, I had that on VHS. I watched it 100 times. You never saw that with me? Yeah. That's crazy.
No.
Wow. All right. Well, I feel I have failed as a brother now. That is the low watermark for my brotherhood. And I
still remember, because like 8 of my friends from like elementary school, we all sat down when we all like got into middle school. It was his 13th birthday, and his parents put on Killer Clowns from Outer Space for us. We were like, whoa.
Those are good parents.
Yeah.
Love it.
Turns out to be a thief piece of shit in the end, but whatever, you know, that's different.
Well, on that note, we will close out Broadcaster Nickels.
It's funny how time turns people into pieces of shit like that.
Well, as you know, we live in a society.
We do.